Hi all, it's so nice to be here to talk about child psychology and law. My name is Yi-An, or you can call me Amy. So I am a second year PhD student at Cornell University who is working in child witness and cognition lab on topics like children's testimonial competencies, including children's eyewitness memory, children's suggestibility, etc. So it's my honor to be here to sort of share my experiences in the field of child psychology and law, since I'm also a licensed attorney at law in Taiwan who work on capital cases and wrongfully convicted cases, also involving child witnesses. So I hope this talk will be interesting and helpful to you, especially for those who's interested in what child psychology can be applied to legal proceedings. So there will be four parts of our talk today. First of all, there's a brief introduction about this field. Second is that I will walk you through a brief history of child witness research. Third is that I will talk about a classic study of child witness. And fourth, last but not least, we will have some take-home messages and I will provide some useful resources to you. Um, so what is child psychology and law, and what are their real-world implications? There are a lot of things that child psychologists they can do in forensic settings, and usually not only do they know about child psychology, they also know about forensic child psychology and clinical psychology. And these people they do research and practice in the field named forensic child psychology or forensic developmental psychology. So in this field, usually there are two main categories of people. One is the researchers, just like me right now. So these people, they try to target problems in real world legal proceedings, and then they do experiments or do field studies, and then they try to draw conclusions from like scientific evidence-based methods, and that can be helpful to their practitioner counterparts. And the practitioners here, they usually work in different proceedings or scenarios regarding legal or forensic cases or events. For example, they might work in courtrooms, they might work as consultants for legal firms, or they might work in correction facilities. What they do is that they try to apply the knowledge that's from the research end and to the practical end that can really be administered in real world cases. And all these people, what they do is that they try to apply child psychology in the forensic setting. And their goal is to help children who are involved in legal proceedings. So here are some common topics that's in this field. So people talk about child maltreatment, including child abuse cases, child sexual abuse, neglect, and also people talk about family violence because children, they're often the victims or the witnesses to family violence events. And also we want to know more about the influential factors that might affect children's eyewitness testimony. And also people want to know more about the psychological testing, assessment, evaluation tools that may be used for children, but in like a legal context. Last but not least, people also pay attention to child custody and family law issues because that what the psychologists they can do in these type of cases they're super important. For example, they might provide recommendations to the courts about the child custody decisions or parent visit plans, etc. So here is sort of like a brief introduction to this field. So later on, we will move on to the brief history. And why I'm going to talk about this brief history, it is because it's closely to the child witness research world and also the practice world nowadays that we live in. So the child witness systems has existing since a long time ago. So you can see from this painting that it depicts a boy, he testifies in the courtroom about his dad's location. And this scene was about an event that's in the 1700s. And also, child witness, they play a very important role in the Salem witch trials that's happening in the late 17th century. So in this series of the trials that's about the witch hunt, is that the legal deciders, they often invite child witnesses who claim that they have witnessed the witch events in these types of trials. And sometimes the children's testimonies regarding the witch events are the sole evidence that lead the woman to be convicted. And nowadays, we know that some of the techniques might be pretty inappropriate to retrieve children's memory about these events, which we will use the example to talk about. And then, so those are the ancient time cases or the trials that we can sort of sense that the child witnesses, they actually play an important role in the legal proceedings for a while. But there was a more recent trend that sort of contribute to the thriving community of people who want to pay attention to this child witness research because of the events that's happened in the 1980s to the 1990s. So there's actually a term coined to talk about this type of cases. It's named the daycare child sex abuse hysteria. So what happened is that, so during the 1980s and 1990s, there are like a lot of daycare, like alleged child sex abuse cases that the parents found that were heard from their children that they are sexually abused, and the location is the daycare centers. And usually those daycare centers, they're run by family members. So the picture here is one of the most infamous cases named the Mark Miting family trials. So through these kinds of trials, because you can imagine it happens in the daycare center, so there are multiple child witnesses that they claim they have been sexually abused. So the prosecutors at that time, they need to interview and investigate multiple child sexual abuse cases. And they found that some of the accusations might be bizarre or not reasonable. And then scientists started to notice that there might need more studies and research to investigate what factors might influence children's memory regarding their claims or their narratives about a alleged sexual abuse cases. Because these kind of cases, usually you don't have other type of evidence, you don't have other type of physical evidence. So the witnesses testimony is super important. So since that time, the modern era research about children's testimonial competencies has appeared. And here is one of the leading scientists at that time, and who happens to be my principal investigator nowadays, right now. And then what Dr. Cici does is that he, at that time, he started to notice that there might be some problems during the procedure of how the psychologist at that time, or the investigator at that time, how they elicit children's narratives about the alleged child abuse cases. And then, so what he did is that at that time, because of the behaviorism, usually the scientists, they only work in the laboratory, and then there is like a disconnection between the research and the practice end. So he noticed this gap, and then he called the leading scientist who studied children's memory to Cornell University. And then they started to brainstorm about how the knowledge about children's memory in the ivory tower can be translated to legal proceedings. So since the 1980s, more and more child psychologists, not only the researchers, but also the practitioners, people started to gather together and to brainstorm about the best practices that can be used to elicit like unbiased, accurate narratives from children about a specific event or a specific series of events. And then we will talk about one of his classic examples in a few seconds. So now we're going to talk about the Samestone study. And it is inspired by the true case that Dr. Cici was aware of. So at that time, you can imagine that there is a desert of the studies of how child witnesses was treated in legal proceedings and also in real world. So in that case, is another alleged child sexual abuse case. So the child witnesses, they can claim that she suffered from sexual abuse by her acquaintance, and the neighbor who is the alleged offender has a really bad reputation in the neighborhood. So but there is no other evidence that can corroborate what the victim said. So Dr. Cici want to know that whether the bad reputation of the offender, for example, he might have like a good job at that time and he's wandering all the time, but whether these like stereotypes or at least non-event specific details might influence children's narratives about a specific event. So here's what he did. So he interviewed like children of different ages about a specific event. So, but there are some designs before and after the event. So the event goes like this. So there's a man named Samestone. So he entered a classroom for a few seconds and he did nothing and he left. That's the event the children should talk about or remember about. But he has like a 2x2 between group design of this. So there are 4 groups of children. In the first group, which is a control group, so these children, they only witnessed the to be remembered event, which is that Mr. Samestone, he came to the classroom, he showed up for a second, and he left. And then there are the stereotype group, which is that before the event, they were informed that, Mr. Samestone, he's super clumsy, he breaks things all the time, and then he's very rude, etc. And then they also witnessed the same event. And there is a suggestion group. So this group, they did not receive any information about Mr. Samestone before they witnessed the event. But after the event, when they're questioned about what happened, the interviewers, they use suggestive techniques to ask about the questions. And last but not least, there is like a stereotype plus suggestion group, is that this group of children, they receive information about Mr. Samestone before the event. And there were also questions in a suggestive manner about the event after the event. So as you might see here, there are like different proportions. And this proportion is that whether the children, they claimed that they have witnessed or they know that Mr. Samestone do something really bad. For example, he might break something in the classroom and he might say something really bad, etc. So you can see that in the control group scenario, even though the children, they're in really young age, let's say the 5 to 6 year olds and even the 3 to 4 year olds, only less than like 20% of the children claim that they have witnessed the bad things that's done by Mr. Samestone, and which is quite accurate, even though they're in super young age. And you can see the stereotype group here and the suggestion group here, that as long as you use some like inappropriate or misleading ways before or after the event of interest, you the people might influence children's narratives and beliefs about whether those events might have happened, which they did not happen at all. And then the harder part is that if people use combined misleading way to communicate with children about a specific event, apparently children are very easy to be impacted by these ways of talking of adult interviewers or adults that's relevant to the scenario. So we can see that even though they're like children of really similar backgrounds and similar ages, but as long as the external environmental changes, the performance on their eyewitness memory performances and the content of narratives and their responses to specific questions and specific event can be significantly different. So now we're going to talk about the take-home message and the useful resources. So we don't have a lot of time here today. So the only take-home message I want to share with you is that children, they can be pretty reliable informant if they are interviewed properly. But it is very tough, and then you want to be very careful to examine whether the children, they are interviewed properly, and also whether there are other external factors that might influence children's memory abilities, narrative abilities, social concerns about a specific event that might influence what they respond to certain type of questions or inquiries. And also, I know that you come from like different backgrounds or with different majors. So I'm here to provide some relevant free resources for those if you want to seek more about what I have mentioned, or if you're in pursuit of like more education in relevant fields. So if you're looking for grad programs in the US, you can definitely go to the American Psychology Law Society, and they have great programs in psychology and law. And then they provide guidance about two different types of programs. So one is more like research oriented, just like my program. So like if after I graduate from my program right now, I am not eligible to practice as a licensed forensic psychologist. So for those who might be more interested in, like, for example, being a licensed forensic psychology, and you might want to look at the APA accredited programs. And then those, they provide courses and trainings or even interns that can help to cultivate a forensic psychologist. And also, if you want to study abroad, you might want to take a look at the European Association of Psychology and Law, and they provide like wonderful guidance about the psych and law programs. And some of the labs, they're the leading child forensic psychology labs in the world nowadays. And also, I know like I don't have a lot of time to share some interesting research or like past cases in this talk, but you can go to see these two movies. They're super relevant to what a child can affect the outcome of a case, and then what the adults can do to help enhance the performances and the influence of a child witness. And also, here are the TED Talk. Even though this TED Talk is like not specific about child's memory, but you can sort of listen to that, and then it sort of talks about their falsified memory. And then there are some issues that we want to pay attention to regarding witness and testimony. And also, there are two very good videos that you might want to look at if you're interested in this series of topics. So the left one is a documentary that record Professor Cici series of studies regarding child witness. And then these are very insightful. For example, he talked about how he noticed the research question and how he designed the research method and what they found. And it's very intriguing. And the right one is a very short clip. It talks about what is a good questioner of children and how adults can help to not contaminate children's narratives about a certain event and how they can keep children's credentials. So please feel free to email me if you have any questions regarding this field. And then what I am providing a picture here is that this is a photo of Professor Lu and I like 10 years ago. And then I want to share my experiences that even though as an undergrad, you like right now, you don't know what you want to do in the future, but you just stick to what you're interested in, and then you don't know like in the future you might be invited to one of your old friends course to share some of your recent experiences. So I just hope that this talk might be helpful, and then thank you for listening. Feel free to write me emails or visit my website to know more about this field. And then good luck with everything in this pandemic time. So bye.